In this part of the tutorial, we are going to create the next test that is going to delete a gist. Let's create the structure for the test. Public void test delete gist. Let's write down structure of this. Let's say the test is going to be given a gist when I delete the gist, then the gist should be deleted. Now let's say this is the BDD structure of the test. Given a gist. So what is given a gist? The fact that we create a gist, and so we need mostly all the code that we did here. We're going to create the gist. So we need to copy the whole thing and we're going to modify it a little bit. We still need the authorized header in the spec. We're going to change the description so that we can identify this gist. So instead of saying gist created by API test, we can say gist deleted by API test. It is still public. Then test file deleted by API test. The content will be this is a test gist file deleted by API test. I'm just giving it a different payload, so some different name, so that we can verify that this gist is actually deleted at the end of the test. Now, this is where we create the gist, but what we need to do is we need to get the ID of this gist. Why do we need that ID? We need that ID in order to delete the gist at the end of the test. So for this, we are going to refer to the rest assured guide, and there's a part which talks about extracting values from the response after validation. So they have given a sample response and they have shown how we can extract certain part of this JSON. So here at the end of this, then they call extract, and in an extract they call path. They specify what path. So here you get underscore links dot href to the dot next dot href, that this part is being extracted, and this is the code for that. If we look at the developer guide, when we create a gist, the response comes back, and in the response we have this ID. We need to extract this ID. So let's try that code. We are going to store that ID here in a variable. Let's call it string ID created. At the end of this call, we say extract, and then we say path, and the path in this case is ID. Now we are going to store the ID of the gist we're going to create in this test. That ID is required when we want to delete the gist. Let us go to the documentation and we look for delete a gist. That's all the way at the bottom here. Deleting a gist is very easy. You create a delete call to /gist/gist ID. The response expected is 204. So we're going to write that down. We're going to create another spec here, add our request spec, that is authenticated spec, and now we're going to say when dot delete. The delete has to go to this URL / the ID. So ID created is added to the URL. Then we validate the status code, and if we look back, the status code is 204. So we're going to write 204 here, and that's the when part of it, when I delete a gist. Then we do our assertion. The assertion is basically that the gist is deleted. One way to verify that the gist is deleted is we get the list of all the gists for this user, and we make sure that this ID that we created, which was further deleted, is not in the list of the gists that we get back. We are going to do the same call that we made in the first test for lists of gists for the user. So we copy that code here. But from here, what we need to do is we need to get that list of IDs that is returned from this call. In the original test, we were not verifying anything there. Now we need to get that. So again, the same thing as we did earlier, extract dot path ID. What's going to be different here is that in this case, we're going to get a list of IDs and not just one single ID. The reason why it is when you get a list of public gists, what you get is a array, and in an array you get one or more gists. Hence you get a list, an array of IDs. When you create a gist, you don't get a list back, you get one object back. When you do an extract and you get the path for this call, you are going to get a list of strings back. So we can give it a name, IDs retrieved, and just to make it easier to read, we're going to indent it. So now I have this list of IDs, and now I have to run one assertion. I call the assertions class of
Jupyter
API. I say assert false, and then I have a Boolean condition in this saying IDs retrieved dot contains ID created. This is the final assertion that we make on our test. So if I go back again to this test, given a gist, I have a payload, I have an authenticated request spec. With that, I create a gist and I extract the ID of the created gist. When I delete the gist, I use that ID to actually delete the gist. Then I verify that the list of gists that we get for this user does not contain this ID. Let's run this test now. And I'm going to just expand this run area so that you can see the console. Post, we got a 201, post is created, and this is the output. Then we delete, we get a 204, successful. Then we do a get on all the gists of this user. We get a list back in which we have 1 and 2 gists. Now, at the end of our previous test, if you remember, we had 2 gists for this user. So those are the 2 gists that have been retrieved. The third gist that we just created is not in this list. And at the end, the test is successful. That assertion saying that the ID that we had created in this test, which we then deleted, is no longer in the list of gists for this user. To verify that on the UI, we will go to the user's gists. This is where the status was earlier, and now we're going to refresh the page. And we still see those 2 gists. We do not see the gist that was created and then deleted in that test. So now we have 3 tests here, one for listing the gists, one for creating the gists, and one for deleting a gist. A very minimal set of tests has been created. We have shown you how in Rest Assured you can make these calls, how you can in your test output see all the calls that are being made and the response that you're receiving from them. And in the next set of series, we are going to simplify this code. We're going to make it more robust. We're going to make it a clean code. If you see, we are using a lot of code that we are duplicating. The spec builder is being duplicated. A lot of code has been duplicated here. And if something has to change in the API, we need to do a lot of changes. This is not maintainable code. This is not clean code. In the next set of tutorials, you are going to see how we improve this code to make it a very robust code. I'll see you in the next tutorials.